Start with this view of one of Australia's strangest creatures, the duckbill platypus, and then go nose to nose with a 3-meter gray nurse shark, flash a smile at a crocodile, and marvel at the kaleidoscopic charms of the fish and coral of the Great Barrier Reef. Built on a pier in Darling Harbour, the Sydney Aquarium has become one of the city's leading tourist attractions since opening in 1988. One of the largest in the world, the Sydney Aquarium has 3 large floating oceanariums, more than 50 other tanks, and a crocodile pool. It also boasts more than 5,000 animals and 600 separate species, all of them Australian. Different displays reveal the diversity and richness of Australia's marine life, with exhibits on the Murray-Darling Basin, the rivers of the far north, mangrove habitats, the Great Barrier Reef, and the coastline of eastern Australia. The most popular display is undoubtedly the Open Ocean exhibit. Walking through an underwater tunnel, the visitor is surrounded by hammerheads, Port Jacksons, and 300-kilo gray nurse sharks. Sharing the water with them are a variety of smaller fish, including schools of tuna and barracuda, and tiny zooplankton. Other major displays are the Sydney Harbour Oceanarium, devoted to the green moray eels, stingrays, seahorses, schooling fish, and other aquatic flora and fauna of the harbor, and the seal sanctuary. In Sydney, we stayed at the Novotel located on Darling Harbour. Here are some nighttime views of the harbour taken on our first evening in Sydney. The ship shown in this view has been converted to a fine restaurant where we had dinner one afternoon in Sydney. Behind the ship in this scene can be seen the Novotel where we stayed. The next day, we set out on a tour of the Blue Mountains, located some 45 miles northwest of Sydney. Heavy fog and overcast skies forced us to concentrate on less distant vistas, such as this King's Tableland Aboriginal site. As we walked toward a cave used by the Aborigines, we had this panoramic view of the King's Tableland areas. This overhanging rock once provided some measure of protection to Aboriginal dwellers. Paintings have been left on the rock face, but we were not allowed to photograph these since this is an Aboriginal sacred site. Our visit to the Blue Mountains concluded at the Australian Wildlife Park. This is home to hundreds of species of Australian animals and plants. This is a wombat. Wombats are marsupials native to Australia and Tasmania. Monitors are the common name for a genus of lizards that includes the largest living lizard, the Komodo dragon. Perhaps second in fame only to the kangaroo among all Australian animals is the koala. Koalas are arboreal, marsupial animals that in appearance resemble a toy teddy bear, and in habits they resemble a sloth. Koalas reach a length of 24 to 33 inches and have a maximum lifespan of 13 to 18 years. The female koala bears one young at a time, and the young koala is kept in the marsupial pouch for about 6 months, after which time the female carries it upon her back until it is half grown. Koalas are found only in eucalyptus forests of eastern Australia. The animals frequent high eucalyptus trees, feeding on the leaves and flowers of certain species of eucalyptus as well as on mistletoe and box leaves. The diet of the koala gives it a distinctive body odor that is less appealing than its appearance. Koalas are lethargic and often remain in the same tree for days. The males are more active than females and feed during the day. Females sleep all day and feed at night. Koalas sleep curled up on the limbs of trees, firmly grasping the limbs with their feet. The animal does not relax its hold even when mortally wounded. Later in this video, we'll see more koalas in their native habitats. The emu, a relative of the ostrich, is the national bird of Australia. This is an albino kangaroo. Some 70% of the birds in Australia are unique to Australia. This is a blue-winged kookaburra. It is known locally by the nickname the laughing jackass for its raucous laughter. All dressed up and nowhere to go, the 16 species of penguins found in the southern hemisphere are all flightless birds adapted for an aquatic existence. 3 layers of short, dense feathers and an underlying layer of fat insulate penguins from the frigid ocean water. After a day of touring in the Blue Mountains, we returned by ferry to Sydney. When we had arrived the previous day, Sunday morning, in Sydney, it had rained all day and throughout the night. As you can see, the skies remained somber looking, but this did little to dull the magic of Sydney. Designed by Danish architect Jorn Utzon in 1957, the famous Sydney Opera House is very much an Australian building. The unique series of sails construction suits its position on the water and mirrors the boats that continuously cross the harbor. The white tiles covering the roof reflect the warm Australian sun, and the bold character of the building reflects the Aussie spirit. Here is a monument to the offbeat humor of the Aussies. Sydney is Australia's largest and oldest city. Founded at the harbour, it has gradually spread inland, and the metropolitan region now covers 668 square miles, an area considerably greater than that of Los Angeles. 2 major bodies of water, the South Pacific Ocean and the harbour, a major inlet of the ocean, have given Sydney its shape. The harbour divides the downtown core on the south from the suburbs, which stretch out to the north. The Sydney Harbour Bridge, shown here, and a tunnel connect the 2 sides. Located on an island suburb on the north side of Sydney Harbour, Taronga Zoo has the finest collection of Australian plants, animals and birds, as well as wonderful harbour and city views. The animals are displayed over 74 acres of gardens that slope down to the water's edge. Join us now for some of the highlights of the Taronga Zoo, including the rainforest aviary with over 30 species of Australian birds, a kangaroo walkabout, gorillas in the mist, and the free flight bird show. Beautiful. This is gorgeous.
bird they were talking about was the black-breasted buzzard.
Where did it come from?
Now you can see that his feet are too small to grab that egg, and his beak isn't designed to do the job, try as he might. So let's see what he does with this rock. That's why we call him Slammer. Now what you're seeing here is not trained behaviour. What we're doing here is tying a piece of meat to the end of the string. And our next bird, Bonnie the Raven, has to figure out how to get that piece of meat. Now of course she has been in the show before, so she's been in this situation before. But the very first time we put her here, it only took her about 10 minutes to figure out how to do it. Now I might get everyone to sit down very quickly. You don't want to frighten the birds or distract Bonnie from her job. Let's see how she goes about getting this piece of meat. A bit of intelligence, a bit of coordination, and at the end of the day you end up with a free meal. So that sort of intelligence sounds at his wings and his body mate as he flies through the air. So ignore those social calls. Birds in the trees behind us alarming when they saw that owl. They recognise the owl as a predator and behave accordingly. We've also found that we haven't seen any mice or rats in the vicinity of the show area here since flying the owl's interaction between the prey species and the predator species. Rats are pretty smart, they know not to be out when the barking owl is out, so they stay well away. He's learnt to do with those dollar coins. Pick it up, back to the presenter, and ready to put it in the pocket. Look at that big bird coming down from the side, flaps wander from the water, and flies off to the nearest root. Now, it was great to see a demonstration of skill like that, catching that fish off the water there. Unfortunately, she wouldn't be able to do that in the wild, because there's a bit of a sad story behind Misha. She was actually found hanging upside down from a tree in a rabbit trap. Now, unfortunately, that was probably set deliberately for her. A lot of people are still ignorant about birds like this, and someone may have thought that 15 kilos. Yep, in actual fact, 15 is a lot closer than 300. He actually weighs...
The Royal Botanic Gardens are located on land in Sydney Harbor where early settlers once tried to grow vegetables. They present an array of exotic and native trees, shrubs, and flowers. A view skyward in the Botanic Gardens shows flying foxes high in the treetops. The common flying fox of Southeast Asia and Australia generally does not migrate, and they may roost in the same tree throughout the year. The majority of flying fox species do not use echolocation to navigate, as do most other bats. After 3 days, we departed Sydney, flew to Adelaide, and then made a tour of the city of Hondorf, located about 15 miles from Adelaide. Hondorf was settled in 1839 by Lutherans fleeing religious persecution in Prussia's eastern provinces. They named their town after Captain Dirk Hahn, who brought them to Australia in his ship, the Zebra. The village, which retains its German appearances, provides us a fine afternoon walk on a beautiful day. The next day, we flew to Kangaroo Island, some 68 miles south of Adelaide in the Southern Ocean. Of all the places in Australia to witness native fauna and natural surroundings, none is more impressive than Kangaroo Island, home to dozens of birds and mammals. The animals are not on display, but you can easily see them in the wild if you venture off the beaten track. Kangaroo Island is approximately 105 miles in length and 35 miles wide. The bush is alive with wallabies, kangaroos, koalas, echidnas, and galahs. The emu, a relative of the ostrich, is the national bird of Australia. The emu inhabits open plains and brush in Australia where it feeds upon roots, fruits, and herbage. Located in the southwestern section of Kangaroo Island is Flinders Chase National Park. This 74,000-acre park is home to many of the animals native to this island, including this colony of New Zealand fur seals located at Cape Bukudik. These New Zealand fur seals belong to the southern fur seal genus, which includes 9 species of seal that live in the oceans of the southern hemisphere. All 9 species are characterized by a thick, woolly undercoat. When not in the open sea, southern fur seals inhabit coastal beaches, remote rocky islands, and quiet bays chosen as prime breeding spots. The southwestern section of Kangaroo Island provides a perfect habitat for these seals during breeding. Southern fur seal species vary in size from 5 feet in length to about 7.5 feet in length and weigh from 440 to 770 pounds. Males, or bulls, are significantly larger than the females, or cows. The coats of the New Zealand fur seals are generally dark gray brown to dusky black. They have a dense undercoat of fur that lies just below the outer coat, and this is more critical to retaining body heat than blubber or body fat. At times, their thick fur has such a superheating effect that the seals cool off by fanning themselves with their flippers. New Zealand fur seals have excellent eyesight and are quick to detect a threat. If attacked, they will bite and slash with their canine teeth, throw their body at the enemy, or slip into the water and swim away. Fur seals favor squid, octopus, and a variety of fish for food. Dominant bulls arrive at breeding sites a month or 2 before the cows. These bulls stake out their territories, challenge and sometimes fight rivals, and then mate with all the females within their area, known as a harem. Pups are born to the seals in November and December after a gestational period of nearly a year. Pups are nursed for 10 to 12 months. Smooth and silky at birth, the pups develop a luxurious undercoat of fur at about 6 months. Adult males and females breed about a week or so after the pups are born. Another impressive selection of coastal scenery on Kangaroo Island is Remarkable Rocks. Remarkable Rocks is a group of precariously balanced boulders perched on a great granite dome which plunges 90 feet to the Southern Ocean. High atop Remarkable Rocks are some beautiful views of the western coastline of Flinders Chase National Park. A young female gray kangaroo joins us on a panhandling mission right after we had had lunch. Since tourists have until recently been allowed to feed the gray kangaroos, they have become quite used to humans and show no fear. Feeding is now prohibited because the kangaroos are glucose intolerant, and feeding them cookies and other sweets will kill them. After trying her most inviting moves, this young lady eventually hopped back into the brush. Flinders Chase National Park is also a good place to find koalas perched in the fork of eucalyptus trees. You will note that many of these trees are virtually stripped of their leaves and that the koalas are agile and able to climb out to the distant-most parts of the limb, even under quite windy situations, to attain the choicest of eucalyptus leaves. In 1802, when Matthew Flinders discovered the island, in gratitude for the plentiful supply of fresh kangaroo meat, he named it after these gentle animals. He noticed that they resemble the kangaroos of New South Wales, except the Kangaroo Island kangaroos were darker, longer-haired, and more heavily built. They are, in fact, a subspecies of the western gray kangaroos, and are plentiful all over Kangaroo Island, but especially so in Flinders Chase National Park. Although shy by nature, they are engagingly friendly towards people and often gather around asking for tasty morsels. The kangaroos shown in these scenes average 5 to 6 feet in height and weigh from 150 to 250 pounds. They are a species known as Western Red Kangaroos. Kangaroos are found only in mainland Australia and New Guinea and on some of the offshore islands such as Tasmania. Red kangaroos and gray kangaroos are found in grasslands, savannas, and open woodlands. A physical feature that distinguishes kangaroos from other marsupials is the adaptation of the hind legs and tail for hopping. In red kangaroos, for example, the hind legs are very large, roughly 10 times the size of the small front limbs. When moving slowly, kangaroos use all 4 legs. When they need to move fast, they rise up on their muscular hind legs and start hopping. The leaps of some kangaroos are legendary. Red kangaroos moving at top speeds can cover 16 feet or more in a single bound. They are able to reach speeds of more than 31 miles per hour for short periods. The kangaroo's heavy, muscular tail is also important for locomotion. It serves as a counterbalance and a rudder during hopping, and provides support when the animal sits. Would you like to say your name so we'll remember?
Robert and Margaret Bruce from Wondrous Rest, Kangaroo Island, South Australia.
Very good. The end of our first day of adventure on Kangaroo Island finds us at a small country inn in American River, one of 3 small towns on Kangaroo Island. Our host, Robert and Margaret Bruce, provided us with a wonderful evening meal, lots of fine conversation, and fine accommodations. The next morning, these shots of flowers and the ever-present rose-breasted galas were made in a short walk around Wanderer's Rest. After a fine breakfast, we were off on the road again for a second day of sightseeing on Kangaroo Island. Only a few miles from Wanderer's Rest, we came across these cormorants, who nervously watched our approach. Further was an idyllic scene of black swans. Still further down the road, we encountered these pied oyster catchers and learned that pied in the bird world always means a black and white coloration. This beautiful bay, Pennington Bay, on the southeastern side of Kangaroo Island was an early morning stop on our second day of sightseeing. These koalas were comfortably perched high up in their eucalyptus trees on this blustery morning. The echidna, or spiny anteater, is another of the inhabitants of Kangaroo Island. These animals have powerful claws which adapt them for rapid digging into hard ground. Their back is covered with stiff spines mixed with long, coarse hairs. Their head is small, and their nose is prolonged into a slender snout. The yucca, or grass tree, shown here at a spot near Rocky River where we stopped for coffee, is abundant on Kangaroo Island. The yucca has sturdy stems topped by a crown of silvery, grass-like foliage. Long-lived and slow-growing, they grow best in full sun and well-drained soil. Moving through the acacias and into the scrub brush on Kangaroo Island, we quickly came upon some of the 60,000 or more wallabies that inhabit the island. Wallabies are simply smaller members of the kangaroo family, and because of their small size, they need the protection the scrub affords them from eagles flying high overhead, waiting to feast upon them. Lest we forget, this fellow reminds us what the #1 industry on Kangaroo Island is, and it's not tourism. Look sharply in this view of the scrubland of the southern part of Kangaroo Island and you will get a glimpse of the rare black cockatoos. Perched overhead is the rose-breasted gala. A hiker we know appears from the scrub. When lunchtime rolled around, our 2 Australian guides pointed our vehicle toward pasture land and a fine spot for preparing lunch.
New Zealand, right? You say that one about the Aussie driver in New Zealand? He sees the Kiwi fella standing out in the paddock, committing the match relaxing the sheep. You see that one? No. This Aussie's a bit disgusted. seeing this, he says, this is phenomenal. And he pulled over and he leaned across the fence and said, excuse me mate, he said, where I come from we share those things. The Kiwi bloke looked up and said, pass off mate, I'm not sharing this with anyone.
Time to put a whitefish on the barbie. After lunch, one of our hosts treats us to the music of the didgeridoo. The didgeridoo is a musical instrument used by the Aborigines of Northern Australia to accompany singing and dancing in rituals and entertainment. The south coast of Kangaroo Island is as wild as it is beautiful. Being wholly exposed to the might of the Southern Ocean, it is an unforgettable panorama of boiling surf, rugged cliffs, and windswept headlands which provide protection for beautiful bays. Seal Bay, shown here, affords the visitor a year-round experience of seeing sea lions basking on the shore or frolicking in the sea. This park has a breeding colony of sea lions. It is unique in that people may move freely among these carnivorous mammals as long as they do not tease or antagonize the 300 to 500 pound sea lions. The Kangaroo Island sea lion is one of the rarest in the world, and the island is a most important breeding site. Of a total world population of about 5,000, Kangaroo Island has about 1/6 of this number. On the way back up from the beach, a wallaby sits soaking up rays from the winter sun. A large red kangaroo pauses in munching on the vegetation to bid us a fair goodbye as we leave Kangaroo Island. A 2-hour flight north from Adelaide takes us to Alice Springs in the heart of the red center of Australia. In Alice Springs, our first stop was the School of the Air.
It gives you an idea of how isolated our children are.
Most of our children live on cattle stations, and cattle stations can range, the average cattle station is about 5,000 square kilometres, but they can range anywhere up to 15,000 square kilometres, and each cattle station supports one family.
The next stop is the Alice Springs Telegraph Station. This station, midway along the Overland Telegraph line from Darwin on the north coast of Australia to Adelaide on the southern coast, played a key role in Australia's development. Opened in 1872, the line suddenly reduced the isolation of Australians from the rest of the world. The exchange of personal and business messages now took hours instead of the months it previously took by sea. By 1900, this very isolated station was home to a cook, a blacksmith stockman, a governess, 4 linesman telegraph operators, and the station master and his family. Set up by John Flynn in 1928, the Royal Flying Doctor Service combined the invention of the portable pedal-driven radio with that of flight to bring medical services to the inhabitants scattered over thousands of miles of Australia's outback. Anzac Hill Lookout provides a panoramic view of the Alice, as she is affectionately called by Australians. Alice Springs is at the country's geographical center, surrounded by the McDonnell Ranges and the russet-colored earth and rock formations that give this region its name, the Red Center. Alice Springs' Old West ambience and the area's beautiful scenery make it a popular tourist stop in Australia. The next morning at 6 a.m. we leave Alice Springs by coach for Ayers Rock. Our first stop in the 4-hour trip is at a camel farm. Some of the animals associated with Australia were not indigenous to the continent. Camels were brought in and used by early explorers as a means of traversing the island continent's vast deserts. Today, large numbers of camels roam wild throughout the outback of Australia. Some 288 miles southwest of Alice Springs in the Northwestern Territory of Australia lies the Uluru-Kata National Park, home to Ayers Rock and the Olgas. Many people go to Uluru National Park solely to see the world's greatest monolith. However, a lot of folks feel that the Olgas are actually prettier. The Olgas consist of 36 enormous rock domes with narrow valleys between them. These natural formations rise from the desert plains in an 11 square mile region within Uluru National Park. Australian Aborigines refer to the circular grouping of more than 30 red rocks as Katajuta, meaning place of many heads. Also called the Olgas, the rocks display beautiful color changes as the sun moves through the sky and illuminates different pockets of vegetation living in deep crevices. The Olgas attract tourists, hikers, and climbers. We were fortunate to arrive in Uluru National Park some 3 weeks after early spring rains. The result was an outback providing an unexpectedly beautiful green contrast to the deep red of the rock formations, the crystal clear blue skies totally free of pollution, and beautiful floral displays throughout the valleys. After hiking through the Olgas Gorge, we stopped off at the starting point for the Ayers Rock climb on our way back for our first evening at Ayers Rock Resort. Lengthening shadows provide an unforgettable contrast between the russet colors of Ayers Rock and the crystalline blue sky. Ayers Rock is easily Australia's most distinctive landscape symbol. It has been painted and photographed by millions of visitors and continues to awe all who see it. An indescribable sense of mystery fills those who watch its color change as the sun sets or rises. The rock, standing 1,148 feet above the surrounding desert, is composed of sandstone with a high iron content, and the rich red hue is provided by oxidation, literally rusting, of the iron on the surface. Ayers Rock is 2 miles in length from east to west and 1 mile across from north to south. Aboriginal people still live around the rock, and in fact the park is owned by Aboriginal people and leased to the Australian National Park Service. Sunrise at Ayers Rock is an unforgettable time of mystery. These first views are looking across the Australian outback in the opposite direction from Ayers Rock, just as the sun is beginning to break over the horizon. There is no better time to understand the beauty and mystical significance of Uluru, Ayers Rock, than in these pre-sunrise views of the monolith. As the sun rises, both sky and rock appear to glow with an inner light, and both Aboriginal mind and that of the 20th century visitor can feel the mystery of creation as well. The yellow acacia found all over the Australian outback is the national flower of Australia. Climbing Ayers Rock is 1 mile almost straight up and requires about 2 hours round trip. More than 25 people have lost their lives in this climb, some from falls and some from heart attacks. A walk around the base of Ayers Rock gives an effective sense of the sheer size of the rock formation, the incredibly beautiful textures within the rock, and a view of the artwork of the Aborigines who have used Uluru as their tapestry. Uluru has deep cultural significance for the Aboriginal people who believe it played an important role in their dream time. The sheltered caves and overhangs around the base of the rock have acted as canvas to hundreds of generations of native artists. There are also many sacred places where photographs are not allowed. 3 hours by jet from Ayers Rock Resort, and another world away from the arid red center, is the tropical paradise of Cairns, gateway to the Great Barrier Reef. Cairns looks like a colony in the tropics with lots of white buildings, palms, and bougainvillea. With an international airport since 1984, Cairns is also home to a thriving tourist industry. Cairns developed first as a port serving an inland gold rush, then later as a railhead from which produce grown on the fertile Atherton tableland and sugarcane from the coastal plains were transported to other parts of the country. While the warm climate, trade winds, lush tropical foliage, and laid-back lifestyle of the colorful community have been attracting tourists since the 1920s, the industry boomed in the late 1960s when prolific game fishing grounds were discovered offshore. Cairns is Queensland's best point from which to explore the wonders of the Great Barrier Reef. Our choice for exploration of the reef was to take a Great Adventures catamaran to Green Island, an inhabited coral cay that's close enough to be visited in one day from Cairns. Leaving Cairns, one has these views from our boat of this tropical center of Australia's far north. Arriving for the first of 3 days on Green Island, here was the view of the coral reef, pier, and our Great Adventures boat departing to head back to Cairns. Fish feeding on the pier gave an indication of the thousands of varieties of fish inhabiting the Great Barrier Reef. As we take you in pictures around Green Island, I'd like to tell you a little about the Great Barrier Reef. It is quite simply the world's greatest living structure, extending for 1,240 miles along the Queensland coast of Australia. In the south, the reef's outer edge is up to 186 miles offshore, and the closest coral lies about 9 miles from the coast. In the north, the reef starts about 12 miles offshore and extends for approximately 18 miles. In area, the Great Barrier Reef covers an area about half the size of Texas. The outer reef isn't a solid wall, but a system of coral shoals and individual ribbon and patch reefs upon which waves pound relentlessly. On the far side of the outer reef, the Pacific Ocean is hundreds of fathoms deep. The Great Lagoon between the outer reef and the mainland is dotted with coral cays, continental islands, and inner patch reefs. Coral cays, like Green Island, are low islands formed from coral rubble and sand created by the reef on which they stand. Over time, this sedimentary debris is thrown up by wind, waves, and currents onto the sheltered side of the reef top. At first, a sand spit forms, and if the cay enlarges with the accumulation of more coral debris, it may become a nesting site for birds. Eventually, plants grow from seeds deposited in bird droppings. The Great Barrier Reef is comprised of more than 2,600 separate reefs and over 300 islands. The reef is a living organism. During the day, reef-building corals retract their polyps into their limestone skeletons. At night, the polyps are extended to feed on microscopic animals drifting in the sea. Over many thousands of years, the limestone skeletons of dead coral polyps have formed reefs. These have a veneer of living coral and provide the perfect environment for many kinds of animals, fish, worms, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, clams, snails, sponges, crabs, shrimp, and starfish. No fewer than 400 kinds of hard and soft coral comprise the Great Barrier Reef. Some of these are shaped like fans. Others resemble flowers, tree branches, or mushrooms. Brain coral eerily resembles its namesake. Living coral ranges in color from white to pale pink and yellow to vivid purple and red. The reef is incredibly beautiful, and just when you think you've seen all that nature has to offer, a new shade or shape appears. Located on Green Island, Marineland Melanesia is home to over 50 Australian saltwater crocodiles, sea turtles, and beautiful aquariums. Here in the turtle pool are green turtles, loggerhead turtles, and the hawksbill turtle, which was once prized for its beautifully patterned shell. The Australian saltwater crocodile is the largest and most fearsome of the species. It can live to over 100 years and can grow to be 23 feet in length and weigh more than 1,000 pounds. The aquariums are built to allow natural sunlight and a steady influx of green islands surrounding seawater. They provide an excellent opportunity for up-close viewing of many of the reef's marine inhabitants. This is a stonefish. This colorful fish is called a tusk fish. This shot was made the morning that we are leaving to go back to Cairns. This green island, taken from the end of the pier nearest the shore. Just before leaving Green Island, we took a quick walk through the underwater observatory at the end of the pier and spotted this barramundi. This is the view as our Great Islands Adventures boat arrived back in Cairns. On our way to visit our last stop in Australia, the Cairns Aquarium, we passed these pelicans and a spoonbill ibis, all busy looking for lunch. The Cairns Aquarium gave us one last beautiful view of the marine life inhabitants of Australia's Great Barrier Reef.